Some people have known since they were little that they want to have children. Others sit on the fence. Some medically cannot have children, and the rest, well, they don't want kids at all. In 2023, Stats Canada reported a third of Canadians between 15 and 49 didn't intend to have kids. Fertility rates are dropping too, except for a slight uptick in women 35 to 44. The country's fertility rate that year was actually a record low of 1.26 per woman. Today on Blue Sky, we're talking about the choice to be child-free. We'll meet an Ontario woman who says she was sterilized by choice to ensure that she would never get pregnant. Not only is she open about it, she wrote an article in MacLeans and told the whole country. We'll chat with others in Saskatchewan who've made similar choices, and we'll talk about the reaction they get to their decision. We also want to hear from you. Are you child-free by choice, or did you always know you wanted children? Why does the decision make some people uncomfortable? And why do we make other people's family planning our business? Call 1-800-716-2221 or email us bluesky@cbc.ca. Katie Townsend says it was not a single moment when she decided she didn't want to be a mom. She says instead it felt like waiting for an important phone call that never came. She recently authored a piece for MacLeans. It's called "I'm 36 and child-free, and I just got sterilized." She joins me now to tell me more about that choice. Katie, welcome to Blue Sky.
Hi, Sam. Thank you for having me.
So tell me more about how you knew you didn't want to have kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's a decision that I can really pinpoint to being a child. I just never saw that kind of nuclear family life for myself. I remember my parents talking about, bills and my piano lessons and t-ball and all this sort of stuff that just came with having children. And I remember being very young and thinking, wow, I never want that for myself. That sounds awful. I hope I never grow up. To me, it was a lot of growing up meant having kids and a family, and I just knew that wasn't for me.
So when you wrote "waiting for an important phone call that never came," what did you mean? Did you think it would change your mind?
It just kind of felt like I knew that there was this decision that I would eventually have to make for myself that, like you talk a lot about sitting on the fence. I knew I was on the fence and I didn't know when I would know what side of the fence I was supposed to be on. And I kind of learned over time that there really is no moment that tells you that you're going to be on one side of the fence or the other. It's really a decision that you consciously make. Just like having a child is a decision you consciously make, and it is a permanent decision. Women can make that decision on the other side of things. I can make a permanent decision to not have children.
You prefer the term child-free over childless. Tell me about the distinction.
Yeah, I think this really depends on who you ask. But for me and in the child-free community, childless kind of alludes to this sense of longing. There is a want for a child. A lot of the time, women who are unable to have children will identify as childless because eventually they would have liked to have a child, have a family. Child-free really speaks to more of the freedom that one gets from not choosing that path. That is, the reason why I identify as child-free. I never wanted to have children. I love children, don't get me wrong, but I didn't see that path for myself. So I look at it as more of a freedom from that.
In your piece, you talk about how things changed as you and your friends grow older, and everyone gets into that season of life, whatever that season may be. How did you become more certain as you watched these seasons of life evolve?
Yeah, I'm lucky that I have a lot of great friends that took this path and they have children now, and I'm a big part of their lives. So I can really see, when you talk about seasons, I've seen a lot of that. I've seen, the newborn phase with my friends. I've seen the toddler. I've seen the, starting school. I've seen the elementary school years. It really has helped me understand that, there are people out there that, they want a baby. They don't really see the entire spectrum of what it means to be a parent. I have friends that have teenagers, and it's a completely different parenting experience than parenting a newborn. So I really looked at it from the spectrum to come to that decision. I really wanted to understand what it was like from 0 to 18. What does parenting mean? And a lot of that affected my decision as well.
So when did you start looking into your options, and what were your options?
Yeah, my options really, it's the traditional birth control that women, that's just what they use, condoms, birth control pills, IUD. When I started to really figure out how I felt about parenting and the potential of becoming a biological parent, I really didn't want any of that for myself. I didn't want to be on hormonal birth control. I was having a lot of really bad side effects, and I was looking for something that was more permanent, that would help me stop taking hormonal birth control, really get back in touch with my body the way that it's supposed to be. I had been on some sort of birth control since I was 15 or 16. So, I really didn't even know what my body was doing without all of these these fake hormones. So that really played a big part in it. One thing that has been really interesting is, since I've been sterilized, a lot of women have reached out to me and they've said that they didn't even realize that sterilization was an option. These are women that know that they don't want to have children, but think that they're just sort of stuck using these traditional birth control methods. So it's really helped open a lot of eyes to the other options that are out there that are not just based on hormonal birth control.
So you ended up having a procedure, and it's a lot more invasive than men getting a vasectomy, yes?
Definitely. I'm lucky that, it's still a day procedure, but obviously I've never had a vasectomy, so I can't compare it. But from what I've heard and in my research, the recovery for what I had, the bilateral salpingectomy, is a lot tougher. But, it came down to, I wanted to make this decision for myself. I did have a conversation with my husband about, maybe he would get a vasectomy. My family doctor actually told me to ask my husband to have a vasectomy. It came down to, I didn't feel comfortable asking my husband what to do with his body. And it also came down to, I wanted to make this choice for myself. I really believe in women's reproductive rights, and this was a choice that I happily made for myself.
What was recovery like? How long did it take to go through the procedural process?
Yeah, the entire procedure took just, I think, a couple hours, to be honest. I was asleep, so it was great. I just had a few dreams. From the time that I got home, I was bedridden for a couple days. I stayed in bed. I just recovered. I was lucky that, I could take time off work. I would say, I was back to myself about a week later, where I could walk around no problem. And within 2 weeks, I was back to doing yoga, doing Pilates, playing golf. I was back to my regular life. So it really was a quick recovery. I'm lucky. And yeah, I felt just so relieved that I could just start the rest of my life not having to worry about this thing that was kind of over my head, which was an unplanned pregnancy.
How does your body feel now without hormones, having this done? Like, how are you feeling?
I feel great, honestly. When I was on the birth control pill, I was having mood swings. I was having a lot of migraines. I was having a lot of brain fog. I can't say, of course, that is fully connected to being on birth control, but I will say that ever since I went off hormonal birth control, I have been feeling a lot clearer headed. I feel a lot more stable in my moods. I did feel like the hormonal birth control was affecting parts of me.
Tell me about the reaction. Some people don't even tell their friends and family they have a procedure like this done. You told the whole country and the internet. So what was that like, and what's the reaction been?
The reaction has been very positive, I will say. I've received a lot of notes from women who, like I said, didn't even know that this was an option. I'm lucky that I have around me a very strong group of female friends that they completely agree with where I'm coming from in terms of female reproductive rights. They were along the journey with me. as I was going through everything, going through my consultations. So I feel very grateful for that. The response has been great. I am actually very relieved. This is a very sensitive topic. And it's also one that I find when you talk about it, especially when you talk about it confidently, it can sometimes bring out some people out of the woodwork that, have opinions about women's bodies. I'm grateful that I haven't had too much of that or any type of backlash. So I'm feeling good about it. And I feel like I've reached a fair number of women and help them understand what other options are available to them if they are trying to avoid pregnancy.
Did you get any backlash?
I wouldn't call it backlash. I have gotten a couple, not mean notes, but, I've gotten a couple notes about what if I change my mind. I've gotten a few people that are actually in my life that have told me, well, it's reversible, so you can always change your mind. And then I have to tell them, actually, no, it's not reversible. This is an irreversible decision. So I think there's also a lack of information about the procedure. I think, there is this idea of, getting tubes tied, which is a procedure that was done in the past that was reversible. Really now, if you're looking to avoid pregnancy, it's this procedure, which is the actual removal of the fallopian tubes, which is the first choice for doctors and surgeons to perform. One, because it is, I think it's foolproof. So, the chances and the efficacy rates are higher. And also there were studies done that shows that when you have this procedure, it actually lowers your risk of ovarian cancer.
Okay. This is all really helpful information. Before I let you go, why is it important that you talk about this confidently and with your full chest and saying why it's important to you? Because as you said, it is a sensitive topic and I don't know why it's a sensitive topic.
Yeah, it's a great question. I wish I had a good answer for you. The reason why I want to speak about it loud and proud is because I really think that women need to really reflect on what they want in their lives. I think, in the last 30 years, I'd say the decision to become a parent is not made lightly anymore, which I really appreciate. But I think before that, I think the choice to have kids or not was taken very lightly. It was just something that you do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've made a lot of leaps and bounds in understanding that, you can have a child-free life. And it doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you're broken. And, we are just really pushing forward in the options that women have to continue living that life with options like sterilization so that people don't have to depend on the hormonal temporary birth control options.
Katie, thanks so much for sharing your story with us and for being so open with everyone. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Sam.
Katie Townsend is the author of a piece in MacLeans that's called I'm 36 and Child Free, and I just got sterilized. We met up with her in Ontario. I want to go to the phones before I bring in my next guest. Christina's on the line in Saskatoon. Christina, go ahead. Oh.
I appreciate you answering my call.
No problem. What did you want to share?
So I guess I have my own story that I'm not quite sure if it totally correlates, but I never wanted kids either. But we all think that we do. And we very often sort of get sucked into men's thinking and often, have to use tons of ways and means of trying to not have kids with respect to different types of birth control. And then I ended up at 29 having a first child and avoiding sex at all until I was 33 to have another one. Certainly that's a little bit too old in my view to be having kids, but it's one of those things that women can get very, very, very easily roped into all across the globe for any number of means and ways. But one of the things that I really wanted to talk about was that women who have kids that didn't want them can face lifelong depression and postpartum depression from it, and then develop estranged, weird relationships with their kids because of it.
Mm-hmm. Christina, thanks so much for calling and sharing your story with us. Okay. I want to bring in our next guest. Katie is in Ontario, but we know from the numbers that people all over are saying no to having kids. But not having kids doesn't mean you don't like kids. Canadian social media influencer Alicia McCarville lives on the east coast of Canada. She literally has millions of followers. And in 2020, 5 years ago, she recorded this TikTok video.
Things people assume because I don't want kids. 1, that I don't like kids. And this is incorrect. I love children. I just also love to give them back to their parents. 2, I'll change my mind. No, I won't. 3, I don't think I'll be a good mom. Just because women don't want to have children doesn't mean they doubt their abilities to be a parent. 4, that I'm scared. First of all, being a parent is scary. You have to push a football-sized human being out of your vagina and then raise it. That's terrifying, but that's not why I don't want to be a parent. 5, that I didn't have a good childhood, and this one pisses me off the most because I have the world's best parents. Me choosing not to have children is not a reflection of how incredible my parents are. Leave childless women alone. We're good. You're not going to change our minds. We'll be all right.
So since then, 5 years down the line, she's posted countless similar videos, some of them funny, some of them serious. All of them reiterate her and her husband's choice. They don't want to be parents. And the reaction in the comment section is always mixed. Some people cheer her on for being so open about it. Others, not so kind. Here in Saskatchewan, I've brought together a panel of ladies who have some thoughts. Morgan Mayer and Taryn Wall are both child-free by choice and intend to stay that way. And Talitha McCloskey is a mom of 2, and she's one of the founders of Raise Her Co. They're a community of people aggressively supporting the advancement of women and girls into leadership roles, no matter their attributes. All 3 of them join me in our Regina studio now. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, Taryn and Morgan, let's start with you. When did you know you didn't want to have kids? Morgan, I'll start with you.
I would say there wasn't maybe a defined moment. I always thought, I was like, oh, like I'll want them later. But when I was 21, it was like, oh, by 27, I'll want them. I'll want them at 27. 27 arrived. I was like, oh, like maybe like 30. 30 arrived, nothing. And I just kind of got into this rhythm, especially with my husband. And I was like, I realized that, this is such a big decision. And I was like, I have friends who have had that urge to have children their entire lives. So I just can't wait to be pregnant. I can't wait to be a mom. I was like, I've never had that. What's wrong with me? But there's nothing wrong with that at all. It was just something that I had to really accept. And it wasn't any sort of hard exception. It was just like, all right, I don't want kids, and that's okay. I'm really cool with just being the village, being the aunt, and being there for not only my friends' kids, but my friends as well.
How did your husband take it? Did he want kids?
We had this discussion, and he was he was on the same sort of wavelength. It was just like, oh yeah, like that's a future us problem. And then it just kind of with his job and just with how that worked and my job at the time, I would have ended up being a single parent 50% of the time. And I know myself enough that I would have resented his ability to leave. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that not only to my husband and our relationship because I respect it too much. I don't want to do that to myself. And I think that's doing my potential future children a disservice if I have resentment.
Taryn, what about you? When did you know you didn't want kids?
Well, I had the surgical sterilization in 2018. So I believe I was 33. But
well, you knew for sure then.
I knew for sure then.
But was there a time before then that you were like, did you ever have the urge to have kids?
I don't think I ever did. No. I remember being 11 or 12, having a sleepover, and a bunch of my friends were talking about, imagining their future families, and my husband's going to be like this, and I want to have 3 kids. These are their genders and names, and I didn't have anything to contribute to the conversation. I imagined my life, maybe I have an acreage with animals, maybe I adopt or foster or something like that, but I couldn't see myself as a mother or parent, and my friends thought I was weird. And then I wondered if there was something wrong with me, and it's something that I investigated for a long time.
You went through the medical procedure to have your fallopian tubes removed.
Yes.
Who did you talk to before you made that decision? Is this something you struggled with yourself, or did you have someone help walk you through the process?
Great question. So I spent 4 years as an educator at Planned Parenthood. So my job involved talking about birth control and pregnancy and all of those things. So being the educator, I was learning a ton myself and working with medical professionals. And so I started talking to them about those options. And it was one of those nurse practitioners at Planned Parenthood that referred me to the OBGYN for the procedure.
Did you talk to a counselor or friends? Like, how did you
Right.
talk through the mental side of it?
So I did talk to a counselor, and so I am someone who has had some mental health struggles in the past, and pretty severe ones. And so when I was making this decision, my counselor worked through, is this related to your mental health? Do you think that you wouldn't be a good parent because of that? What was your childhood like? Is that impacting it? Is it related to finances? And she was fantastic because she didn't invalidate my decision and was really outright about not wanting to do that. But she said, I do want us to investigate some of these areas of your life to make sure that that's not what is informing this decision, so you wouldn't regret it.
And now it's made you confident to say this like publicly, that you're like, yep, I'm not going to have kids and I physically cannot.
Yes, absolutely.
Today we are talking about the choice to be child-free. My guests are Taryn Wall, Morgan Mayer, and Talitha McCloskey. Taryn, I'm curious about this procedure because so many women, I say my age, you get into the 40s and you start having the perimenopause discussion. Does having this sterilization put you into early menopause? What happens to your body if you are not having to go the hormone birth control route, but then you've removed your fallopian tubes?
Well, the fallopian tubes don't produce. It's the ovaries that produce
Correct.
the hormones. So there's no impact on menopause transition that I'm aware of. The OBGYN that I spoke to said the only thing that might happen potentially is some additional bleeding down the line, which may be confused as a period and maybe think that my period was shorter or longer. But yeah, it hasn't impacted.
So you still get a period?
Yes, still get a period.
So some of the benefits, but not all of the benefits. How did people react when you told them you were going for a sterilization surgery?
I think because of working at Planned Parenthood and being so open about reproductive rights and things like that, the people in my life were really positive about it. I have a couple of friends who are child-free. I have a male friend who did have the vasectomy as well. So he actually drove me to the hospital. So I didn't have a negative reaction at all, I guess, except I think my mom was a little bit sad about maybe not having grandbabies for me. But
But you have a sister.
Yes, I have.
Who has kids.
I have a twin who has kids, yes.
So they would look sort of like you because you're identical twins.
I do have moments when spending time with them where I think, oh, this is what my spawn would be like. And I did make the right decision. I love them. They're fantastic.
But you get to give them back.
Yes.
You get to give them back. Okay, Talitha, you have 2 kids.
I do.
But I think it's important to bring you in on this kind of conversation, not only because you're helping raise the next generation of women, childless or with children. When did you know you wanted kids?
I think that actually I was kind of like Morgan, and Taryn as well, where there was never like, oh, I had baby dolls all the time, and I always wanted to be a mommy. And in my early 20s, I was like, I don't think I want kids. And then I met my husband, and I was like, oh, okay. So having someone else to do this with is actually like the dream. And I don't have to do it all by myself. And this person is a very kind-hearted, loving human. So I would definitely like to create more of those in the world. So it was when I met my husband that I was like, oh yeah, I could do this. But I met him when I was 21, and I didn't have my first son until I was 29. So still took some time, but but it was also because that was my choice, because I was focusing on my career and building out that kind of life for myself.
I think the interesting thing, as we saw in the Stats Canada report, that there's actually fertility rates are dropping, except among women 35 to 44. I'm in my 40s, and a lot of my close friends had their first child in the last 2 years. Like they're in their 40s with infants. And it is such an interesting, wild ride. I think when I was 20, we assumed you don't have kids beyond 40. That's
Right.
not a thing you can do. Our bodies don't do that. But I think as we're seeing with the Stats Canada numbers, that women are having these lives and careers and figuring it out, and then maybe making the decision like you are, like, oh, I met the right person. I actually do want to do this because I know that I'm going to have this person who puts in equal work and doesn't have maybe that resentment that Morgan talked about, where,
Right.
you know, if your husband's going to be gone, almost everyone is a 2-income family now, right? So it's just the world is so different. Taryn and Morgan, you've both been really open about not wanting kids. Was it always that way, or is this something you've grown into?
I'd say I grew into it. I guess I wouldn't say I grew into it. It was always just like I never really denied that I didn't want kids, but I never really made it a priority to actually speak out about. And that's really only happened in the last few years that I'm like, oh no, like now I'm 35, I would be considered a geriatric pregnancy, and it was just. I don't know. I think it just naturally became, as I matured, I went, well, this is who I am now. So here, why fight it? Why hide it? Why try to deny it?
You've leaned into it.
Yes.
What about you?
I feel like in my 20s, my family started asking me about, do you want to get married? Do you want to have kids? Maybe putting some of that pressure on. And I was very, nope, just leave me alone. But then internally, I had to figure out if I was sure or not. And part of that exploration involved me actually becoming an early childhood educator and working in childcare facilities for about 10 years. So I love kids, and I've also worked with youth. I've worked with infants and, children of all ages. But yeah, that desire never really formed for me. So.
No. We are talking to a panel of women about this today. We also want to hear from you. Are you maybe a man who's decided to be child-free? What kind of reaction do you get? What went into your choice? Do you have these same conversations with your guy friends the way that women may talk about it? Give us a call. I'm not one of you. I would love to hear from you. Call 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. Morgan, have you ever considered having the medical procedure?
I have. Honestly, it's still something that I kind of grapple with. I'm at this point, I've considered it. However, my husband is like, no, he's like, no, I want to go and I'm like, okay, whenever you're ready, again, your body, your choice, whenever you're ready, you can do that. But it's like, I'm open to it. I used to be very much like, no, I don't want to do it. And then I was just like, cause it's easier for them. And then I got to this point where I was just like, okay, let's make this decision together. What should we do? And he has chosen to do that whenever it's right for him, which I'm like, yeah, that's totally cool. We came to this decision together, and we should figure out the outcome together too.
I hear March Madness is a very popular time for men to get they can stay home and watch basketball. But this isn't the first time you would have had, if you were to do it, to have a medical procedure related to having children, and that's something that you're also really open about.
Super open about it. Yes, I had an abortion when I was 19. I was living with my boyfriend at the time, and we had a whoopsie. And there was, when I found out, again, I was 19. When I found out, there wasn't a single ounce of me that went, this is right, this is correct, this is the right time, this is the right person, this is it. And I had to listen to that inner intuition. The only thing that brought me back was like, what will people think? What will people think if I go through with an abortion? Or what are people going to think? Or who's around me? Like, honestly, disappointing my family and my partner's family at the time was a very big concern. So I chose not to tell anyone. No one knew until about 5-6 years later.
When you went through with that, did you worry you'd have regrets?
No.
Because that seems to be, and I like that you didn't hesitate, but that whether it is choosing to be child-free, whether it's choosing to have an abortion, the reaction from people always seems to be, what if you change your mind?
I've never had that. I've never had that, I'd have a 13-year-old right now. I never see that in longing. It was the exact right choice I should have made for not only my life, but my partner at the time as well. And that was, it's a choice that brought me to this day right now. And I am very grateful for that choice.
And I think this is a question for all three of you, and I'll let you decide who answers this or not. Does wanting or not wanting kids make dating and relationships more complicated?
I don't think so. I think you can be just very clear and honest. I mean, obviously, your partner will have a say in it, but it was pretty clear from the get-go for me anyways. Like, we had talked about it relatively early on, and it was something that I had wanted, and he said, yeah, I definitely want kids too. So I think that, I mean, I guess if you have opposing views, that's something you really need to consider. And I've seen relationships expire because of that.
Expire is such a polite way of putting that. I thought you were going to say explode.
Oh, yeah,
so.
or crumble into an abyss. But yeah, so I've seen relationships expire because of that, and I think that you just have to be open and honest and not willing to. I mean, we've heard even from the caller earlier that she had kids and she didn't want to and she wasn't ready. And, if she would have had the autonomy and the safety and all of that, and I don't know her situation, obviously, but if she would have had all of that to say, no, this isn't right for me, then maybe they would have, gone separate ways and they could have lived a happier life, her being child-free and, whoever else with kids. But yeah.
And Morgan, you talked about how you and your husband just kind of came to that decision naturally together.
Yes. And because I think, again, when you're younger, you're like, oh, like I'll have kids. It's a future thing and I'll teach him this. And then, the future is here and you realize you're like, oh, well, I don't really want that. And that really honestly happened organically for both of us. And we love our nieces and nephews and we love being around them, but we love going back to our retreat and we really love just being with each other and being that support for those who are closest to us.
Taryn, when it comes to dating and in that world, has it been a complicated thing for you? Or do you tell people right away, straight up, I can't have kids?
Yes, I do. And I date people of all genders, but I am open to being a step parent or dating people who have kids. So it hasn't been an issue for me at all.
You've never had someone say, oh, never mind?
No.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Because I think and you see it kind of in the movies where it plays out where like the woman sits down at the table and she says, I'll tell you right off the top, I don't want to have kids, and if that's a problem for you, then, we should end this right now. And, I mean, they're usually Hallmark movies or whatever, and it's fine. But in reality, that can come off as really abrasive because we are in a time where women do have more autonomy over their bodies, and women do have more say, more choice. Talitha, that kind of falls into what you guys are doing with Raise Her. Tell me about that. Yeah,
we are very much huge advocates for, specifically for leadership and women getting into leadership roles. And that's not like the capital L leadership. That's like being a leader in your community and that sort of thing. And we've seen very firsthand that with leadership and accessibility to leadership, you need the confidence and the community and not having a confidence of being able to have your own body autonomy and being able to make your own choices and being comfortable in those choices and being able to stand, 10 toes down, stand in those choices without people having a say whether or not you should, make that choice is huge in raising future generations. And so the girls that we work with and the gender diverse youth that we work with, we see that firsthand of being able to say like, if you say no to something, that is a complete sentence. Or if you say yes to something, that is a complete sentence. And you're allowed to make those choices for yourself. And I think also just even with like now we do a lot of advocacy around policy change and that sort of thing. So it should be from, universal childcare and access to abortions all the way to sterilization. That is a complete medical healthcare coverage and support for women and people who, have uteruses that don't want to have kids.
Let's talk about the workplace because that is where leadership can filter into. We know women still do not earn as much as men. It's crawling. It's crawling, but it's still a thing. How does having or not having kids impact what you choose to do for a living and your ability to advance in that career?
So, I think that the stigma still very much so exists in a lot of places. From a personal standpoint, I've been very fortunate to work in environments, and specifically the environment that I'm in right now, that supports me. And so I actually have an 8-month-old right now, and I do contract work, and I'm on a meeting, and I'm, holding kids, and I'm doing different things. And it's something that I feel very fortunate that that workplace is very open to it. But I also work in a workplace of entirely women, and that's run entirely by women. So that's one side of it. I think that what we see for other women is that there's huge stagnation with career advancement, and women come back to the workplace when they do have kids, and it's immediately like, well, I don't want to give you extra work because, I don't want you to, if your kid is sick, or do you have to leave early because that's a problem because now your kid is sick, or you have to go pick them up, and that's a huge issue. So I think that there's still a lot of work to do, but I think being loud about it, like what Razor does, is helping create community and help people, feel a little bit safer in those spaces.
We'd love to hear from you if you're listening today. What decision did you talk about before you had kids? Did people react in a way that maybe surprised you? Are you someone on the fence? What kind of conversations do you have around having children? Call 1-800-716-2221 or email us bluesky@cbc.ca. I got an email from Jay. It says, no one asks parents what if they change their mind.
I'm on that TikTok thread right now. It's fascinating.
You're on a TikTok thread?
There's this. It's on the algorithm, and there's this one particular creator, and I cannot remember her name right now. And she goes through these Reddit threads of regretful parents, and it was just like. It's honestly quite validating sometimes, because I was like, oh yeah, that's how I felt, and if I chose, I could end up with that sort of resentment and that regret, and I don't want to do that, and I don't want to do that to not only the child but also those around me. Mm-hmm. So,
okay, in this economy, simply taking care of yourself is expensive. In June, Christy Shen wrote about the cost of raising a child for the Globe and Mail. Here is what she found. Quote, it takes an eye-popping $367,148.77 to raise a child in Canada from birth to age 18, according to a federal government study. The report from Stats Canada looked at expenses including housing, food, and transportation. That number is based on 2017 data that she adjusted for inflation and does not include college or university. Talitha.
I'm like, oh, I got 2 of those.
So you're looking at $750,000.
Yeah.
What things are you factoring into your mom life that maybe you didn't consider in your kid-free days?
I mean, childcare is always one of them. Other things I consider are, I have 2 boys, and I want them to do activities. And I think I'm in a privileged space that they can do activities, and we can afford for them to do activities. But there's so many factors. Even if for even my checks, I'm like, we should put away this amount of money into their RESPs, and so that they can do this. And then that takes away from fun stuff, quote unquote, that we get to do, or that I get to just spoil myself with. But that was also my choice to do that. And so I knew very much going forward that when we were going to be having kids, there would be an adjustment, and that I do still long for the days of just, being able to go our separate ways of my husband's going to go to the gym after work, and I'm going to go, have a cocktail with Morgan. But
anytime.
But now she'll just come along, and we'll take the kids, and she'll be the people's auntie. But so I think that those are things that I definitely factored in. I think that everything I say now is in this economy, because it is very expensive, and it's getting worse by the day, it feels like. So we do, I thrift almost all of my clothes, and my children's clothes as well. That's one way that we kind of get around expensive things. They also wear one shirt at a time, that's it. And so, I can give it back into the circle of recycling. But yeah.
I noticed you used the word adjustment and not sacrifice. Was that intentional?
It is intentional, because again, it was my choice and my husband's choice to have kids. And so I was very aware. And again, I had kids later. I mean, also I was was considered a geriatric parent with my last pregnancy.
Isn't that the best word?
Oh, it just feels so good.
Sign me up for the home, baby.
Yeah. And I was like, there must be some perks that come along with this.
Someone makes your food.
Yes. That's not what happens now.
You just get the label high risk.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But I also... we worked really hard to have both of our kids, specifically our second one. I had a lot of losses. And so I knew that what I was doing and what I really wanted. And so I think that also comes with a lot of clarity. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just an adjustment for me and for my husband and for our life. But it's something, again, I'll say it again, it was my choice to do that. And I don't feel like I'm losing out on something because now I have kids. I'm notorious for just taking my youngest everywhere. He's been on stages with me. We've been, like, he goes to conferences. He's everywhere. So, yeah.
Okay. Let's go to the phones. Andrea's on the line in Saskatoon. Andrea. Oh, she's still talking to Caitlin. Andrea, go ahead. Hi there.
Hi. Yeah, I was just calling. Hi.
Hi.
I was just calling to talk about the fact that we equate motherhood with femininity and being a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for some folks, they might feel that they don't have the option to become child-free because somehow that makes them less than a woman. And also, I think it's important to talk about the fact that we're going through what some folks call climate change right now, or I like to call ecological collapse. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on the decision to have children because we don't know what the future will be when those children grow up. And I think it can be very stressful for parents. So I have a lot of compassion for people who are living through these times right now, who are trying to keep their kids safe and healthy with all the challenges that are happening.
Andrea, do you have kids yourself?
I've been child-free since my whole life, and I realized I was child-free when I was about 24.
And no regrets? She asks tongue-in-cheek.
Like I said, my whole life I've been child-free, and I just had the opportunity to realize it and put words to it when I was in my early 20s. And yeah, I've never had the urge to be a mother, have kids, or be pregnant or anything. So,
have you had to defend that decision to people?
Child-free. Yeah, some people will tell me, "Oh, you'll change your mind later," which I think is really infantilizing and equates me with my body rather than recognizing that I'm a whole person and I'm allowed to make decisions about my life and what I want to do. I think my parents now accept the fact that they're not going to get any grandkids from me, but I think that was maybe a little bit hard for them at first.
Thanks so much for calling in and making those points, particularly about the environment. I know that that's something that we've heard from parents too, is wondering what kind of world we're leaving for the next generation. Thanks for calling in, Andrea.
Yeah, thank you.
We're getting close to the end of the show here, but I wanted to kind of wrap up with maybe some advice for the next generation. If there's younger people listening and they're thinking, do I want kids? Do I not want kids? Because this next generation, particularly, they're struggling to find work. They're struggling to buy homes. They live online. They judge a lot of their success by likes and interactions online. How do you offer them advice on deciding what's best for them when it comes to having kids or not? As in this upcoming, 18, 22-year-old generation, what would you say as someone who chose to have kids?
Yeah, I would say that parenthood is just, or being a parent is one role that you can play in your adulthood, and it's not the entire role, and that there is lots of other options, and that your value is not based on what you do, similar to like you being a journalist that's not your entire value.
Yes. There's a whole other person
there's a whole
when I leave this
person
building.
There. Yes. So that parent role is just something that it doesn't equate to your entire value. I really loved what the last caller said, is that it's always, being a parent is always related to femininity, and you can be feminine and women aren't always feminine, and vice versa. So I think that it's a choice, and your value isn't associated with whether you have kids or not.
Okay, what about you two?
Do you want to go?
Sure.
Okay, go for it.
Well, when I told my mom that I wasn't going to have children, the advice that she gave me was, you're going to have to get really good at making friends with other people who don't have children because your friends with kids are going to be super busy and don't take it personally. And I'm so grateful for that advice. I think I was around in my early 20s when
That's
she
actually great
gave me that
advice.
Yeah. And I did focus on building social skills and
Diversifying your friendships.
yes. And part of me being child-free means I am intentional about trying to find community. I do put effort into maintaining relationships. And so I would give that as advice. And
I love that. That's
Yeah.
great advice. Morgan, what about you?
I would say, honestly, there isn't one way to be child-free. There's not one way to be a parent. There's not one way to do anything. But for me, what I found, the advice is honestly just surrounding people who accept you for you. And really, I love being there for my friends, and I love being there for my childless friends or child-free friends. There is such a power in the village, and I love being part of that village. And it's just finding your village and being okay and really comfortable with that.
I love that. Okay, we have an email that I'd like to read from Stephanie. It says, I had my first child at 37 years old and my second child at 40. When I was younger, I worked with youth at risk, and I always assumed I was better in that role. As I got close to no longer having a choice, my body yelled loudly, so I went for it. I never knew what love actually was until I met my son. That being said, anyone who doesn't want children shouldn't have children, because as a mother, I realized it was no longer about me, and that changed my entire way of parenting. If anyone is not willing to accept it's not about them anymore, they should just stay childless. Wonderful people are needed all over the world to share themselves with children. Talitha, you laughed really hard at that.
Yeah, because I still try to be, the passenger princess in my household, and I just have only boys. And so, my husband will come home now, and he'll go and kiss the babies, and I'm like, excuse me, what is this? And he's like, oh yeah, sorry, you were just so I still have main character energy, and really try to bring that to the table as much as possible. But no, you absolutely, it's just, again, it's an adjustment. But I just try, nail it down that he should also be worshiping me in everything that I am.
Absolutely.
How is that going? Is it going well?
It's a process.
It's a daily.
Yeah, my oldest is almost 5, so yeah.
Ladies, thank you so much for being so open and so honest. I have loved this conversation, and I hope that other people listening, you've just given them some things to think about when they're having conversations about family planning with their friends, and maybe just to be a little more judgy and take on the ants.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. All right. I'm Sam McKeag. Thanks so much for listening.